This podcast contains language that is not appropriate for children, including naturopathy, homeopathy, chiropractic, and fuck.
No, I'm sad you didn't read what was on the prompter there.
You know what? I have free agency, and I chose not to read what was on the prompter. So, fuck you.
We'll try again next week. Tonight's episode of the Science Enthusiast podcast is brought to you by our patrons because they are awesome, and that list includes James, Alice, all four Michaels, Chris, Sarah, Janet, Amanda, Astrid, Andrew, Jeff, Susan, and our very own friend of the show, Trevor Valley. If you want to become a patron as well, you can check out our page at patreon.com/TSE podcast, and you will get access to premium content like extended interviews, early access, and just a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. And just again, thank you to everyone who thinks that it's worth like throwing a little money our way every show. Like that's rad. Like, thank you very much. Super cool. We hope that we do your dollars justice with this stuff that we're doing. Right? Yeah,
it's cool to have that. And we just went over $100 per episode, which is, I mean, it's more than zero.
Achievement unlocked. It is more than zero. It is triple digits. So it's a number. And thank you guys.
Yeah, and we've gotten tons of positive feedback, which has been great, including from one of our patrons, Alice. We were talking about podcasts and how many podcasts are out there, and she said, well, yours doesn't suck. So that's, I don't know, you can only go downhill from here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that somebody thinks that we don't suck.
Don't suck. So
like that's cool. Like, I mean, I'll take it.
There's that.
I love you, Alice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like one of my favorite people in the history of history, I think. But anyway, thank you for listening to the Science Enthusiast podcast. My name is Dan, and as always, I'm joined by my friend Natalie.
Oh, so all I get is like an utterance. I don't even get a word.
That's about where we're at right now.
I know. But it only goes uphill from here. Like, next week, I'm going to be all right again. I mean, I don't even know where we're going. It's very like up and down with us here.
All over the place. So why don't you tell us about our God of the Week?
Okay, so the god of the week is Plutus, the Greek god of wealth. So he was born to the goddess Demeter. I'm guessing that's how you say it. I don't know. After she, had sex with some dude in a field. Like, they specify.
That's something I never understood. Sorry to interrupt so early.
Yeah, no, go ahead and interrupt my awesome story.
Yeah. Well, I never understood why gods would have to have sex with one another to like make babies, or how that would work.
Well, no. I think this was like I don't think she had sex with a god. I think it was just a dude. It said a hero. Like, he was a hero.
Still,
so I think he was. I know. You think they could just kind of immaculate conception kind of thing,
or forced rape? I mean,
Well.
Tomato,
right,
tomato.
Like, come on, I'm telling a nice story about this goddess who just like had sex in a field.
The Dan Broadbent story.
Like, where do I go after that? But anyways, I'm gonna just let people think about that for a second.
Oh, that's a mental image.
So then, so she has this child, Plutus, and interestingly enough, he was going to become this god of wealth. He was blinded by Zeus, because gods are obviously assholes. He was blinded by Zeus so that he would distribute wealth indiscriminately and not just like give wealth to good people.
Because Zeus could have been like, hey dude, can you just like give it out evenly? Like, didn't even give him a fucking chance.
No, he's just like, I'm going to make you blind.
Just fuck you.
So there's right. It's just like, I'm just going to be a dick because I'm the like top god. So I'm going to blind this little guy. Yeah. So all of the images I saw though of Plutus, this god, it's like he just kind of looked like a baby. So maybe he just like stayed a little blind baby. I don't know. But he's the god of wealth. It said he was first like concerned with agricultural bounty, but then came to represent wealth in general. Like, I mean, I guess maybe he like created the idea of a cornucopia or something. Wouldn't that kind of make sense? Just like that's a bountiful agricultural thing. Little blind Plutus. Poor guy, right? Like just blind and like, I don't know. Is he just throwing
but at the same time,
money in the air?
he's a I don't know. See this? It's almost like
But
this is all
he's a
made
god.
up.
He's a god. So that's cool. But like, I would rather be able to see and not be a god. I don't know. That's me. That's me. So hooray, Plutus.
At least these gods have like kind of interesting backstories.
Oh yeah. Like I think that the stories are cool. Like they're fun. Whatever. But still, there's that element of dickishness in there that maybe they're like, Zeus is kind of Old Testament gaudy, isn't he? Like, I'm kind of an asshole type of thing. Today we are thrilled to be joined by Britt Hermes. Britt is a former naturopathic doctor who now works amazingly to raise awareness of the kind of dangerous world of alternative medicine. Britt is currently a Master's of Science student. She's a writer at Naturopathic Diaries and contributor to Forbes, Science-Based Medicine, and Science 2.0. And she's a recent Occam Award winner at QED. And just gave an amazing, like, standing ovation-worthy talk at the QED conference in Manchester. So welcome, Britt. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And, like, again, just congratulations on just getting the recognition, I think, that, you know, your really great work deserves. So
thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, your talk at QED, I think, was one of the highlights for pretty much everybody that I talked to and was with at the conference. And yeah, it was fantastic to kind of hear your story that we're gonna kind of ask you to share again here today. But yeah, it was wonderful. So I guess like I kind of want to start at the beginning. Like, what's the story of how you became a naturopathic doctor, in air quotes? I'm going to use doctor in that sense. But what brought you down that path to start?
The abbreviated version is I had a bad experience with a medical doctor. And I think this is a very relatable experience for people, especially anyone who's had a new medical condition or a scary medical condition or a health problem that is emotional for any reason. My health condition is psoriasis, which as a teenage girl was a disfiguring medical problem for me that was really emotionally upsetting. And so when I went to my medical doctor, I wanted medicine. I wanted to, feel like I was going to be pretty again. But I also needed emotional support and comfort and feeling like my concerns were being heard in that moment. And I didn't get that from him. I remember asking him about treatments other than steroids. I was really afraid about taking steroids because my mom also has psoriasis, and she's had psoriasis as long as I, have known her, and it's gotten worse over the years. And treating it with different immunological drugs and steroids has been sort of a messy and problematic experience for her. And, I've been in the front row to see all of that. And I was a little afraid of that happening to me.
Yeah.
So, I was trying to address those fears with my doctor, with my dermatologist. And the way that I remember it is that he didn't have time to have that conversation with me. I don't think he scoffed at me, but it was more just like, just being treated like a little girl. Like, here's your medication. Now, please get out of my office and move on with your life. It's not that, it's not the end of the world. It's just a skin condition.
But you wanted to have a conversation and
absolutely
and talk and get that, like, I guess maybe a little bit of affirmation too, that you were going through something.
And I wanted to understand what was happening. It was a very, I didn't understand how literally within a matter of, I think it was just weeks, maybe 3 weeks, I had huge psoriasis patches all over my body, everywhere. And the month before, there were none. So it came on very quickly. And just the whole like pathophysiology of it was very perplexing to me. And I needed someone to just spend a moment with me explaining, how the disease works, what it is, exactly what is known and what is not known, and a little reassurance that we're going to be able to find a treatment for me that is going to help me feel like I can lead a normal teenage girl life.
Yeah. And especially being a teenager, like it's already kind of a fragile enough time in somebody's life. And so you're looking for
brutal.
Something. Yeah. And so then did you decide, or with your parents or whatever, to go to seek different treatment or different options because of that experience?
So I made the decision to look up information on my own, because at that point I didn't realize that alternative medicine was a thing. I didn't know that there was someone else that I could talk to. I'm not even sure I knew about acupuncture. I had been to a chiropractor, but I had been going to a chiropractor as a child, actually, and I didn't consider that alternative medicine. It was just like this other thing that I did. Mm-hmm. And so when I came home from the doctor's office crying, my dad was heartbroken. And my dad was like, "What do you want to do? I'll do anything to make you stop crying." And I said I wanted to go to the library and to read about psoriasis and to figure out, just to get some answers. And so he brought me to the library, and I spent hours there over the course of a weekend just digging through anything that I could find that talked about it. And, just a very old-fashioned way of looking up information, going to the card catalog and just looking through medical texts, basically going to the index, looking at psoriasis, going to that page and reading what was written. And after reading medical texts that basically said the best treatments are steroids and, it's a lifelong condition, I then started to find, just I guess sort of naturally, books that offered alternative information, and began to just devour this information because it offered answers. Yeah. It was like, oh no, this can be explained. It's probably your diet and you have too much inflammation and you can do all of these other therapies and take control of your health. And it was a very empowering moment for me, because I suddenly felt like I had given myself the tools to make myself healthy without conventional medicine.
Well, and you wanted options. You wanted to know that you had a choice and that you had something that you could do. Because otherwise, it's especially I can only imagine for a teenager to say, well, tough shit. Like this is what it is, and you're gonna have to deal with this for the rest of your life.
Exactly. That was exactly it. And it really just started me down this path of believing that conventional medicine doesn't address underlying causes of diseases, and that conventional medicine just wants to put a Band-Aid on everything through, with using prescription medications like steroids, and just starting to believe that that natural options like diet changes and cod liver oil, which I started taking a ton of right around that time, could be as effective as pharmaceutical interventions. And so I already had these sort of like preconceived notions in place when I found alternative medicine, and when I found naturopathy, and when I started reading descriptions about what naturopathy was on the Bastyr website. now as a college student, it fit perfectly with my worldview. And so as soon as I found this website, there was no way I was going to do anything else. This was it.
And that's not, I don't think that's entirely wrong. Going back to like wanting that individual attention and wanting to be heard, I don't think that's entirely wrong with some doctors. Because I have to imagine they're just overwhelmed. I know whenever I go to my general practitioner, like I feel like he just wants to get in and out, partially because I've never had any sort of major anything. It's always like I have a really bad, like a couple months ago, I had a really bad poison ivy thing that I needed steroids for. And he was like, yep, okay, see ya. And I didn't have like a deep personal philosophical conversation with him because that's not the type of person I am. I don't like talking to strangers, present company excluded. But I think that's also part of it is just that so many doctors are just so overwhelmed, especially the general practitioners who, are seeing, I don't even know how many patients a day, and they maybe just don't have the time to dedicate that to, which is something, enter your naturopath who, maybe does have that time, or even they have the extra part of the skill set where, they are a lot more personable than just somebody that actually has formal medical training.
Right. What's interesting to me now, now with the privilege of hindsight, of course, is that I had other medical problems during this time that were successfully treated just with an incredible amount of compassion and time and empathy by medical doctors who gave me everything that I needed in that moment from them in terms of explaining what's happening, explaining the treatment, and then also some of them even provided some emotional support when I needed it. But
you don't remember that.
I chose not to.
Yeah, you choose that experience that really stands out and like kind of like lights that fire.
And that's that's not a detriment to you. That's just human nature in general. Is we're not going to remember the 5 good times we go like to our favorite restaurant. We're going to remember that one shitty time where they had somebody new and they screwed up everything and it was awful. And now we're never going back. Right.
But the bummer is that for me now, it's part of sort of the grief that I go through currently, or, I'm still going through when I think about this, is instead of choosing to look at the awesome medical experiences I had with doctors, instead of looking at those experiences and being like, aha, I want to be a medical doctor like her, I instead decided I didn't want to be a medical doctor like that one crappy dermatologist. And I let everything sort of guide me based on that one crappy experience. And it's such a bummer.
And so, and at least though, you can actually look back at that and say, this happened and I'm moving forward. And I think that's one of the most admirable things about your story. And I think that's why it resonated with so many people. Like when we heard you tell it at QED, is that it takes a lot to kind of stand up and say, I hate to say the wrong choice, but I made a choice that,
just a mistake. People make mistakes. And I think that's part of our experience as humans is to overcome things that we are just naturally predisposed to, like thinking, just thinking natural is always better. And that, thinking that the right answer better than some stranger that you just met that may have gone to school for 8, 12 years to actually do the thing that they're doing.
Right.
And so is that sort of what Bastyr sort of sells in terms of the education that they provide people, is the ability for then these naturopathic doctors to go out and provide this holistic care and the feel good and kind of curing the world of all its problems? Like, does it kind of sell you as a student that like ideal type of?
Absolutely. Yeah. So sort of just backtracking a little bit. So I was in college. I found the Bastyr website. Like I said, it really resonated with all of these ideas that were in place. And it was like, yes, I'm going to be a naturopath. And Bastyr calls naturopaths naturopathic doctors. And Bastyr University uses, or used to use, I should say, very specific language on its website that provides the impression that you are attending medical school when you enroll in their naturopathic program there at Bastyr. And they used language that said the naturopathic curriculum is on par with that of a medical doctor's education. The naturopathic doctor testimonials on the Bastyr website used titles like physician and primary care physician, and you had naturopathic doctors saying that they were working in integrative clinics and working with medical doctors and working in hospitals and providing primary care medicine to babies or women's health services. And there was a whole section on how naturopathic medicine or naturopathy could, or how useful it is in a public health context, because the majority of diseases these days in Western societies are chronic diseases, or diseases of civilization, because we eat too much and don't exercise enough, and a lot of them could be addressed with lifestyle changes. And the naturopathic curriculum at Bastyr it did market itself as being like the key intervention for addressing these chronic problems. And so I sincerely and fully went into my schooling at Bastyr believing not only was I going to become a medical doctor who had specialized knowledge in natural medicine, but I was going to be able to use these skills in a variety of clinical and medical settings, including hospitals, private practices, and even in a health policy context, like say at a governmental level or a regulatory level, like at the FDA or the World Health Organization.
Because you were going to be a medical doctor, according to them, right?
Because I was going to be a medical doctor.
Yep.
Exactly. And I've critiqued this pretty extensively on my blog, Naturopathic Diaries, and either coincidentally or related to my writings, the language and the marketing terms used on the Bastyr website and the other naturopathic websites have now changed, so they don't say these things anymore.
I guess fancy that. It's funny how timing works, isn't it? When you start to maybe get called out on saying things that I mean, it's just not true. I mean, because I know I've read a lot of your blog and looked into this, obviously a little bit now, but the schooling for naturopaths compared to the schooling and training for medical doctors, it's astounding.
The differences are astounding. Yeah.
Can you touch on, I know there's so much, but a few of the things that kind of would make somebody say, oh, holy shit, those are two really different worlds that, a naturopath and then a medical doctor are inhabiting with as far as training goes.
Right. So it's important, I think, for listeners to know, especially listeners who maybe don't have experience with naturopaths or maybe don't live in a city where there's a naturopathic school, is that on a very superficial level, the naturopathic programs are designed and set up in a way to resemble medical school programs as much as possible. And so if you're someone like me going into the program who, a family friend was a medical doctor, but there were no medical doctors or health practitioners in my family or in my circle of friends at all. And there was no one for me to sort of discuss, med school preparation or what it's like to be in med school with. And so I walked into the doors at Bastyr University thinking that this was medical school because they told me it was medical school. I didn't have anything really to compare it to. And also, admittedly, I didn't spend time comparing the Bastyr curriculum with the other real medical school curriculums, because I looked at information provided to me by Bastyr that said, look, you take classes called anatomy and physiology and embryology, and then later you see patients in this clinic, and then you take more classes called gastroenterology and cardiology. And I was like, oh yeah, those are medical words. Like, oh yeah, those are real things. Anatomy is a real thing, and I get to see a patient. Okay, medicine.
Yep.
And
do you think they're doing that? And this may be foreshadowing to something we talk about later. But do you think they do that intentionally, like knowing that they're tricking people, or like in a malicious way, or do you feel like just based on your like these people legitimately? Because that's my like what I think Natalie and I both hope is happening is that these people legitimately believe that they're doing something good because the alternative is kind of terrifying. But do you think like whenever they market that, like they're doing that saying we're going to pretend like this is a real medical education that we're providing, or that they're knowingly and intentionally doing something that's a bit more nefarious there?
It's actually a complex question because of how everything is structured. And so I'll try to answer it in a very sort of organized fashion, but please ask me if I'm not making sense. And so the first part of it is, do I believe? There's multiple ways to answer that question. Do I believe most naturopaths are intentionally duping patients? No, I believe naturopaths are practicing what they have been taught. Okay, so then you go to the schools and, do I think that the teachers and the administration at the accredited naturopathic schools are intentionally teaching inaccurate and dubious and sometimes outright debunked information and passing it off as real scientific and medical information? No, I don't think that's intentional either. I think the problem lies with how the schools became accredited and why they needed to become accredited. So there's a handful of schools in North America, I think we're up to 7 now, so in the US and Canada, that are accredited by an organization that sort of oversees the naturopathic it doesn't oversee the curriculum, it oversees the schools in North America. And
so the Council on Naturopathic Medical Education?
Exactly right. And so this organization is put in place to make sure that the naturopathic schools basically have a clearly laid out mission statement and are well organized and sort of meet organizational standards that should be in place in universities. It does not, the CNME that you just mentioned, it does not sign off on the quality of a naturopathic curriculum. And the CNME is made up of alternative medicine practitioners and proponents for alternative medicine. Now, when the schools became accredited, this was a very strategic move by leaders in the naturopathic community, because in order to keep at least Bastier's doors open, they needed more student tuition. And tuition costs were going up. They wanted, I should say, because I don't know if they wanted to charge more tuition for the naturopathic program. Students were having to borrow private loan money in order to pay for the tuition. And becoming accredited allowed students to then borrow federal student loan money.
Oh, okay. So that
I don't know for certain, but it seems like a serious conflict of interest for. So the former president of Bastyr University, Joseph Pizzorno, founded the Council for Naturopathic Medical Education, which spearheaded the movement for accreditation of the universities, which then allowed students to borrow money and then allowed more money to come into the school and basically allowed Bastyr to stay open. So that's how I see it, and I see that as like I said, as a conflict of interest, and I question those motives because I think in the process of becoming accredited, that term has sort of been misappropriated, been misused to mean that the curriculum has been signed off as a quality education.
Right. The word kind of legitimizes what's going on. And so, people who are, and I agree with you, I think that the people who are going into this, like yourself, are well-intentioned and wanting to help, in some ways kind of change the world and, heal people and all of that. But it just isn't so, is it?
Well, it just doesn't happen, because even though I said, we take classes with all of these same names. So, so the accreditation board could, potentially go to the federal government and be like, look at this beautiful education curriculum that the students learn here. They take a class called anatomy and a class called cardiology. So even though these classes have the same names, the content is not medical school content. So there's a little bit of medicine, but it's mostly naturopathic bullshit.
Yeah. And what's
terrifying is now we're going to have an administration that will be receptive to that, and is going in may even amiss. And we talked about this with another guest we had on with Trevor Valley, that we have so many things that we're going to be distracted. Like even the skeptic community is going to be distracted by now with the Trump administration, that things like this, I'm afraid, are going to be just not because they're not important. It's just we have so many other things to worry about, so many other anti-science things that are going to be happening, and we're going to have to spend so much energy on other things, that things like naturopathy, could very well become like licensed, like in game ground, like it has in Massachusetts.
That is a very depressing thought that I actually hadn't fully considered until.
Well, good. I'm glad I can just bring everybody down to my level.
Bring down the room. Like we're all on your level now. Thank you, Dan. Happy Friday, everybody. This is where we are. But
you're absolutely right, Dan. Yeah, you're right.
You're depressingly correct. Unfortunately, but so. You're like, you go through this training, and what struck me is just like looking at, it must have been on your blog, but like the number of hours that say you spend learning about a subject at Bastyr compared to the hours that medical doctors put in to learning and practicing and just all of it. It's staggering, the difference.
Even then, I can't. It's all made up anyway. So I guess it doesn't matter what specific example I'm thinking of. But it's not uncommon to see somebody say, "Well, medical doctors only spend 2 hours talking about diet, or they only spend a day in med school talking about XYZ, as opposed to chiropractor or naturopath or whomever who we spend 1,000 hours talking about how your pineal gland works, or whatever the hell super bullshit they're pushing.
Super bullshit. It's not just bullshit, it's super bullshit.
Well, it's really misleading to make sort of a quantification chart like that in general.
Exactly.
Even if you were comparing legitimate medical fields, it would be confusing and misleading. But as you said,
the only response I have to that, like the actual medical doctors have to that, is just to say nuh-uh and
nope.
No, that's not true. And then what blows me away is that's the exact argument that they're presenting. Like the people that are pro alt med, they're presenting an argument. They're saying nuh-uh. Then the actual people who know what the hell they're doing say, well, no, you're just wrong, and they reject that because it doesn't make any goddamn sense to me.
So when I first started blogging, I started to address those educational comparison charts, and then I've mostly stopped, because just trying to debunk chart after chart after chart felt like a waste of time, because you can compare classroom hours until you're blue in the face, but it doesn't actually matter. What really matters is the postgraduate training, that medical doctors receive in required residencies and that naturopaths do not receive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tend to focus so for anyone who's out there listening, or, medical doctors, and, have to have conversations with patients about how many hours do you spend learning nutrition in the classroom, because my naturopath learns 90 hours of nutrition. I think the important piece to focus on is that medical doctors complete residencies seeing thousands or tens of thousands of patients over tens of thousands of hours, to the point where they become so damn good at pattern recognition that they can pick up when something is right versus when something is wrong in seconds or even milliseconds.
It'd be like saying, like, hiring an architect to build like a skyscraper who just graduated from college that has no actual experience or anything like that.
I think it would be
hiring them to do like a major project like that they just don't have the actual hands-on experience doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but naturopaths to actually, like, I can go to a naturopathic or whatever they're called university, get my degree and become a naturopathic doctor and never actually have any sort of like residency or anything like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, residencies are not required. So it's like, as you said, it's like if I took a class on how to fly planes, and I sat in a classroom. I sat in a classroom being told how to fly the plane, and I did hundreds of hours of listening to people telling me how to fly a plane, and then I walk onto the tarmac and I sit in the
here's a 747, go.
Yeah, and I start to,
and that's it.
Exactly. Okay, go. Of course you're not going to do it right. It's impossible for you to do it right. You're going to make a million mistakes. You have to have hands-on training.
And that's how you learn, is by making mistakes. And like, so many people don't want to be wrong, but that's how you learn, is you make mistakes and you learn from those mistakes.
Right.
But you need to be like supervised in the process.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. It's like you're then, as a naturopath, sort of sent out into the world to just dive into it. And it's, quote unquote medicine, and there's people's health and lives at stake. And,
Absolutely.
And that's the part of it that, there is obvious danger to this. It's not really medicine to begin with, but then it's people who are not properly trained to know what to do with somebody who has real, like, serious medical conditions. Like, we've seen it, right? Like, what's the tragic, some of the cases lately, right? Like
you're probably thinking of Ezekiel Stefan, the Canadian toddler who died from bacterial meningitis after his parents took him.
Because maple syrup doesn't kill bacterial meningitis.
Or echinacea, which is what the naturopath supposedly, according to her receptionist, prescribed. So, and there's certainly other examples, other cases. In the UK, a young boy with autism was hospitalized after his mom took him to a naturopath for treatments that resulted in, an absurd amount of supplements and vitamins, and even taking colloidal silver. And then there are naturopaths who don't believe in vaccinations, of course.
Of course.
And so you have children suffering with infectious diseases needlessly, and are sick with, like, whooping cough for months and months and months, and experiencing broken ribs or, all sorts of respiratory problems. So there's a lot of misinformation being spread around by people who are allowed to use the title doctor, and it's very dangerous and it's very damaging, from a personal health perspective and also from a public health perspective.
And I think we talked to a couple people before, John Snyder and Clay Jones, about this topic, that maybe the most, I don't want to call it dangerous part of it all, but the most people who do go see a naturopath, or even may treat a naturopath as their primary care provider, even though they're not able to be that yet, hopefully never, Most people that do that, though, like they're not going to have necessarily any ill effects, and that I think that's the part of the danger with this is most people, will probably be okay, but you're going to have like that 5%, 10%, 15%, whatever it is, that have something that the naturopath is not going to have the training for, the knowledge for, be able to identify risk factors for, things like that are going to, just like you were talking about with the child in Canada that died from meningitis that they tried treating with fucking maple syrup. Like you have things like that, and I don't understand how they can justify that. I don't. There's how do they defend that whenever we have a child who died because we had something that was treatable that could have been prevented, but we didn't, so the child died, and that's okay. Like, I don't understand how they can think that's okay.
Yeah. So I have 2 points. So the first is, I think it's impossible for naturopaths to really be able to objectively quantify cases of, or times that they've messed up. Even now, I don't know when I missed a diagnosis or did something wrong, because I don't know enough medicine to know. And because, what was happening in that moment is very complex. Like, the patient's coming to me with already not wanting to use conventional medicine or not wanting a prescription. So there's part of the visit that's already being influenced by expectations on both sides. And the types of patients, as you touched on, tend to be just the worried well. So they tend just to sort of have complaints that aren't serious, or maybe they just want to talk about their diet, or just want sort of like a health tune-up, or to do something that only naturopaths use, which is to optimize their health. And even when things do go wrong, naturopaths have sort of a built-in system of avoiding blame. And my most recent post on my website actually involves this right now. So a naturopath last week wrote me a Facebook message saying she hates me. She has sent me lots of hate messages on Facebook. So I'm a little annoyed with her. We went to school with her, and I went to school with her, and she just drives me crazy, because it's like, I get it, you hate me. Stop reading my blog. Like, come on.
You don't like thing. Good job not liking thing.
Yeah, it's like, go live your own life. But anyway, she wrote me a Facebook message that was like, you should update your blog post on the Ezekiel Stefan case, because the parents were charged with and then found guilty of not providing their son with the necessities of life. I'm not actually sure if that's the right Canadian phrase, but they were charged with not providing their child with everything he needs in order to live a healthy, happy life. And so in her mind, and she said this in the message too, the naturopath absolutely involved in the case had absolutely no fault.
Right, because the
Canadian naturopath, exactly. The Canadian naturopath did nothing wrong. Yeah. And my argument back to her was, well, that's actually not true, because one, the Canadian naturopath is being investigated by the naturopathic medical board there, called a college. And so it actually hasn't been determined what role the naturopath has played in the child's death. And ignoring that, granted that these parents were sort of natural health fanatics in the first place, but they went to someone who called herself a doctor. And they bought a product from a place that was called a medical clinic. And I think it's a reasonable assumption and expectation that something that is being sold to you by a doctor from a medical office is safe and effective. And in my opinion, that is, that's pretty sketchy. That's pretty questionable. And I think that there is blame on the naturopathic community there. And
that's no different than saying, like, if I go to the store and I buy Tylenol, and the Tylenol is actually a sugar pill, and I get upset because I still have a headache, and they say, well, that was your choice to buy the Tylenol, and we just provided it to you. Like, we're providing you something that we know, and not throwing Tylenol on the bus. They have a great product. Blah, blah, blah. I am not getting sued, but it's like saying, well, we provided you something, like, we're misrepresenting what we're providing, knowingly or maliciously or not. But it's your own damn fault for not knowing better. And it's something that David Steffen said, like one of his quotes in one of the articles somewhere. He said, "Do we have a formal education?" Referring to AltMed, and he said, "No, but are we educated in it? Absolutely." And it's like,
you just like contradicted yourself.
Yeah, you just contradicted yourself, and it's this whole thing. And of course, like you hit on there, I forget what it is. Like, his dad owns like a company, and then he was like vice president of the company or something like that. The dad that was involved here, so like they had their hands in this. So, like, they know. I feel like they should know better, but also at the same time, they legitimately believe. Or again, we hope the best case scenario is that they legitimately believe that the shit works.
Well, your argument of, buying an over-the-counter medication from a drugstore was exactly the argument the naturopath gave me. And my argument against that was, except this wasn't a drugstore, and except it's, it's not a drug, it's a medical clinic, and this was someone seeking, your so-called, medical advice. It's easy to blame the patient, is my point. And naturopaths constantly default to blaming the patient whenever something doesn't go right. It's never them. It's never that the therapy didn't work. It's never that they did something wrong. It's that the patient somehow messed it up.
And these are the same assholes that will go back and say, well, doctors and big pharma kill, thousands or hundreds of thousands of people each year in mistakes and whatever. But they don't make any mistakes because, like you said, it's the patient wasn't compliant with treatment, or the, something else, not me. Everybody sucks but me. I'm great. And what we're doing is right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right.
It's also this sort of like, it's a delusional way of thinking because so the reason why I left, being a naturopathic doctor was my boss in Arizona was importing a sketchy cancer drug called Ukraine. The drug was coming from Austria, and he was charging patients thousands of dollars in cash. And then the drug would be shipped overseas, and it would arrive, and then he would intravenously deliver this drug, under this idea that this drug was treating their cancer somehow. And I found out that this was, that this drug is not FDA approved, which then meant that this practice was illegal. And I had found myself involved in this accidentally because under my boss's orders, I had helped administer this drug. And so it was a horrible, horrible experience that required legal counsel and months of processing and some psychological help, I have to say. But something that sticks with me and that, I'm confronted with all the time now that I sort of look for these examples in the alternative medicine community is that you constantly have alternative practitioners. I find a lot of naturopaths who do this that believe that they understand the medical or scientific concept and the evidence for something better than all of the experts in the world. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like, let's say it's vaccine safety, it's drug safety and how to evaluate evidence for a new cancer drug, or even something simple like a test, like a genetic test, which is a topic I'm working on right now for an article for Forbes. And you run into these naturopaths who are like, yeah, I know the rules, I know the laws, I understand the guidelines, and I understand that the experts say that this shouldn't be done, but I'm doing it anyway because I've looked at the information independently and I've come to my own decision that I understand it better. And that blows my mind.
Yeah. It's an incredible way of thinking, isn't it? That this is actually happening. And so you at this point in your life, like having experienced all of this, is that what lit the fire with you to want to sort of expose this world?
Yeah. I mean, at first there was a profound sense of devastation.
I can imagine. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Actually, so I think many people this week are feeling similar to how I felt when I realized that naturopathy wasn't what I thought it was in terms of the outcome of the recent presidential election. In terms of like having a sense that you don't quite understand what just happened. You don't understand
shock and devastation.
Yeah. You don't understand the people who made, the decision that they made, and just feeling like you don't know what anything means anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how I felt. I just remembered feeling, sitting across the desk from my former boss and telling him the information that I found. And his response was like, "And? So what?" I was like, "Well, that means that this is a federal crime." He's like, "Well, I know that what I was doing was, in the legal gray zone, but I chose to do it anyway." To be confronted with that was just, and then to realize that practice is actually rampant in the naturopathic profession. So it was first the devastation of, of feeling betrayed by my boss and let down, and then the realization of the fact that naturopaths all over the country are doing this. And then after sort of coming out of that grief, that's when I got fired up, as you say, and decided that I wanted to not just sit here and mourn, but actually do something about it.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about, some of the things that you've done? I mean, like you have that, like you started that petition, like you're writing about things. I mean, because this is stuff that needs to get out there, because I don't think people know what this is, and that, alternative medicine isn't medicine.
So I started my blog, naturopathicdiaries.com, and I started it as a way to just vent and talk about my experience as a naturopath, because I began to realize that I had a lot of crazy experiences as a naturopath in just 3 short years that could easily demonstrate how naturopaths are not adequately trained to be doctors or to provide medical care of any kind. And I wasn't expecting anyone to pay attention to my blog. I thought, why would anyone care that that I'm blogging about this? Yeah. Obviously, I was wrong. The blog became popular, and I was asked to contribute articles to science-based medicine, and it became very clear to me that no one had written about the naturopathic education, because no one had done what I had done, which was had been a naturopath and then decided to not be a naturopath anymore, and then decided to publicly talk about it. And so I had this unique opportunity to share what the education system is like, and details about what I learned, and how the curriculum is structured, and how clinical training is structured. And all of this information could be used to, of course, educate the public about the dangers of naturopathy, also educate health providers, especially medical doctors, about the dangers of naturopathy, and to also inform lawmakers about what naturopathy really is, to help guide them towards making reasonable policy decisions and not license naturopaths. So I started writing in detail about my education, as I said, and my experiences. And then the opportunities just kind of came rolling in to continue to communicate what alternative and naturopathic medicine is. So I do a lot of podcasts. I'm starting to do a little bit public speaking, like with QED. I started a petition, like you said, at change.org called Naturopaths Are Not Doctors, Stop Legitimizing Pseudoscience. It's aimed at all of North America because Canada has the same problem as US, as in the US, where naturopaths are becoming licensed and registered and allowed to use the term doctor. You can find a link to that petition on my website, by the way. And I now have the opportunity to contribute articles as frequently as I can to Science 2.0 and Forbes, which is just an amazing experience because the readership of these online platforms are huge. And so I've been able to do some of my most effective work through writing through these other big websites.
I mean, something that's impressed me, kind of talking about some of like the awareness of alternative medicine and all that is what like Good Thinking Society has done in the UK, like with how they've challenged homeopathy and actually have, started really making some changes. Like they've been effective. Like what do you think obviously what you're doing is raising so much awareness of this. Like what can we, just as a kind of skeptic community here, like in the US, Canada, like what do you think we can do to continue to challenge these, sort of pseudoscientific beliefs and practices?
One of the most important things that I think people can do is write to their to have a voice in legislation. Yeah. So to write to their Congress people and to express concern about naturopaths being licensed as doctors. And from my perspective, I think it would be incredibly effective to go on the offense and to start to introduce and hopefully pass legislation that places limits on what naturopaths can do, proactively or prophylactically. Because once the naturopathic profession gets their foot in the door, so to speak, in a state, like once they get licensed or once they get in, it's just a matter of time before the scope of practice opens up. And that state naturopathic association is going to come back legislative season after legislative season asking for more and more and more and more until they are legally allowed to do everything that a medical doctor is allowed to do. And it's very hard to repeal and to intervene in that process for a lot of reasons. One, the naturopathic community is small but loud. They're becoming more organized. They're pouring more money into legislation. The National Association, American Association for Naturopathic Physicians, now has 2 new sort of point people to organize legislative efforts and has a marketing outreach person. Supplement companies are funding these movements, so they're now becoming sponsored and have like big corporations financially backing them. And the opposition consists of very busy doctors and skeptics who are skeptics sort of as a hobby. Most skeptics just do this during their free time. Even the really, really popular ones do it in their free time, not as like a main time, not as like their main full-time job. They're doctors or scientists or whatever.
It's a passion that people have, but it's not something that can, be like the full-time passion that, kind of pays the bills and does all of that kind of stuff. So I guess it's important to have as many voices as possible because there aren't people that can devote their life and all of their time to making this change, but it has to be the community of people, I think.
That's right. So the Society for Science-Based Medicine, I think, is a good place to start. It's run in part by a woman named Jan Bellamy. Mm-hmm. She is a former lawyer, and she just really is up to date on all of the legislation for naturopathy and other alternative healthcare professions. And the website does a good job of sort of summarizing and collecting legislative information that is valuable. So either for you to follow up on as just a local citizen or to just be a good place to figure out how to start supporting the efforts to stop legitimizing pseudoscience.
Yeah, and we'll have links to that like in the notes to our show because I think this is just, it's important. Like we have like whatever we can do to kind of stop the slippery slope of legitimizing this, like Massachusetts, then Pennsylvania, and then it can keep going. But I think we have to have some kind of hope that people can come together and maybe stop the train from, just derailing.
It's absolutely possible. It's just a matter of organizing and having sort of strategic timing. So just to make you feel better, Natalie, in the last 2 years, no new naturopathic licensing bills have been passed in the US. I've helped defeat one of them in North Dakota through just blogging and blog writing and sending a letter to Congress people there and to people involved in that, in opposing the legislation. In Idaho, naturopathic licensing was actually repealed, so it was taken off the books. They lost licensing there. And in California, which is a really important legislation place, really important state for naturopaths because Bastyr University has a branch in San Diego. Naturopaths were trying to push for an increased scope of practice that would allow them to be able to practice independently without the supervision of a medical doctor that is currently required for naturopaths there. And I also was able to write a timely Forbes article that helped convince lawmakers that naturopaths should not be allowed to practice independently like a medical doctor does. And so there's certainly more that can be done. I'm just one person writing articles. And so I think there's definitely a ton of hope and a lot more to do. And I think we can be very successful if we sort of come together and create a formal plan to do so.
Well, I think it's awesome. And I think, just as we wrap up to just, I guess, really thank you for the work that you do. Because it's important, I think, any voice that can bring these issues to light and enact change. I mean, just to see what you, as one person, have been able to do. I think that's a great story. And I think it's an inspiring one that, and anyone who's listening that, believes in something or wants to help make a change, it shows that it's possible. And I think right now, any little bit of hope is needed for everybody. So I think, really thank you. And thank you for talking to us today. And so if people want to find you like on the internet, where can they do that so they can keep track of what you're up to?
Great. Thank you. My blog is at naturopathicdiaries.com. You can also find articles on Forbes, Science 2.0, and Science-Based Medicine by just searching my name in the search bar of those websites. And a link to the change.org position, Naturopaths Are Not Doctors, can be found on my blog as well. And of course, I'm on Facebook and Twitter.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Britt, and we hope you'll join us again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So tonight, the reason we love the internet is the Twitter page, Endless Screaming.
I mean, I had never seen this before now, and okay, over 9,000 people are following a Twitter account that's just caps lock screaming, essentially.
One could say it's endless screaming.
Yeah. One would say it's endless screaming. It absolutely is. And
just this. I mean, we're recording this Tuesday night, the 29th, and just 9 minutes ago, they posted an update, and it reads, I
mean, like some are longer screams than other screams. Well, clearly,
and almost 20 minutes ago, they posted,
Yeah. Yeah. So that's it. I mean, I'm not following this Twitter page, but you could, if you want. And the location of this Twitter account is the void. So I can appreciate that. I like that this exists in the void. And the pictures are pretty good. So that's it. Endless screaming. I guess it's fairly fitting for the world that we live in right now. So timely. I think so. Because we are in a dumpster fire right now, so we are all just endlessly screaming as the world burns.
I think that's a bit of hyperbole. I don't think the world is literally on fire right now.
Okay, that is true. Excuse my hyperbole. We're just in a figurative dumpster fire.
I'm the one that's supposed to like shit out everything, and then you're the one that's supposed to.
I know what's going on. I know. Don't worry. I have some optimism coming. Maybe.
Well, that's all we have for you this week on the Science Enthusiast podcast. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed, check out the podcast page on Facebook, on Twitter, my page, A Science Enthusiast, or Natalie's page, Skeptical Parenting. And I believe, Natalie, you have a quote for us.
Patients deserve to know the dangers associated with getting medical care from undertrained practitioners steeped in pseudoscience. Lawmakers need to know that ND does not convey medical competency. Rather, it indicates that the person using the title is unequivocally not a doctor. And that is from our brilliant guest, Britt Hermes. So let's see. I will tease what we have going on next week. But first, I want to give a recommendation for our listeners to listen to another great podcast that I really love. Some friends of mine and of our show, the Last Tuesday Project, a group of skeptics over in the UK. They put out a really great podcast. I think this month's episode will be of particular interest to our listeners, especially the fact that we have a lot of American listeners. They tackled the question this month of, should the Electoral College vote for Hillary Clinton instead of Donald Trump? It's a very interesting discussion of American politics from the point of view of this really great group of British people. So Sean, Haley, Alex, and David, you did a really great job this month, and I hope our listeners go and check you guys out. Next week on this show, we have Chris Cluey he's already joined us for an interview, which we recorded shortly after.
You're ruining the mystique around it.
I know. I'm really transparent.
People.
I know.
People think we're recording this all in one session, but now they know that we recorded that before I even moved into my new house. That was like 3 weeks ago.
I know. I just dropped this whole veil of mystery that exists around this show. So sorry, but it's a really good talk we had with Chris, and that'll be our show next week. So come back, please. It'll be great.
I mean, or no, we won't know.
No. Right. Well, but that's the thing. We have no fucking clue. So you could just be sitting there right now like, fuck you guys. I never want to listen to you again. And that's it. And somebody just slams their computer shut and they never have to hear our voices again.
I hope you break your screen when you do it.
So come back or not. What are you going to go do now? Drink some margaritas?
I am literally just going through the endless screaming Twitter account and just retweeting everything.
Oh, well, I'm going to go watch supposedly a really good bad movie now called Double Down. So I hope it's hilarious. And if not, Miles Power, you gave me an awful recommendation, so
I'm
really
not
funny.
familiar with that. I think I might go finish grouting.
Oh. All right, so I'm gonna go have a more fun night than you, maybe.
I don't know. Have you ever grouted, Tile?
No, I haven't. But I'm gonna watch a bad movie.
I am convinced. I'm going to have to do some sort of deep investigation on this. I'm convinced that home ownership is not only A, overrated, but also B, some sort of grand government conspiracy to fund hardware stores and contractors and all. It has spent so much money.
I know, it's a
Fucking
conspiracy by big hardware. It's big hardware trying to get you down.
And then don't even get me started about property taxes because fuck.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What
And
basically
I'm sorry
what I'm
giggled
what
at
I,
your misfortune.
what I'm saying is my property taxes right now are almost as much as my mortgage payment is. Basically is what I'm saying, because this home was a rental before I bought it. So
Well,
anyway.
anyways, on that note,
I've retweeted the last 7 hours of endless screaming. So for I'm up to 8 hours
so
now.
that means when I go to Twitter, my timeline is going to be all of that bullshit from you.
Just endless screaming. This page has 11,000 tweets. 11,000 tweets. Like, why couldn't I have thought to do something like this?
Yeah, I don't know, but you have your own like cat-based empire on Facebook. So like, you know what?
I haven't posted on Cats in Space. I haven't posted. I know Matthew from Credible Hulk, who helps run it. I know he's been posting stuff, but I have not done much on that in the last few months. I should probably get back on that. It's more fun just to post cat pictures anyway on Skeptical Kitten.
Ooh, you know what? You know what's really cool? All right, so I just got a text from Vance. He's speaking.
Vance Crowe, friend of the show. We can say that.
Yeah. So okay, he's in Colorado speaking. Let's see, grain industry, Colorado grain industry. And here's one of his slides is science moms, and then there's my face and my Twitter, username. That's cool.
There you go.
Yeah. There I go.
Add a girl. Is that any better? I don't.
Yeah,
is that
that
less
works.
condescending? I don't know.
I don't know. No, yes, I have no idea. But anyways, that's the show. That's a wrap.
What are you?
Oh, you're gonna have to just like edit this into something.
It's about what I do every week, I think. I'm not sure what that something is.
The music you heard tonight was written and performed by Adam Johnson and was used with his permission. You can contact Adam at AdamJohnsonDC@gmail.com. This podcast is property of Not Narrow or Straight LLC, all rights reserved.